Hi, meditators! So, sorry about the internet connection today. It looks like we'll be doing a pre recorded session. Definitely want to get you the information you need so you can progress your practice and just continue on this course. So, my first question for you was: has anyone meditated every day between last week and this week? So, as you know, in stage one, that is the only goal for practice, just to establish a regular routine. You don't need to worry at all about the quality of your meditation, just try and build up that consistency. If you already have that consistency of meditating every day, then you can start to work towards the next goal, which is sustained attention on the breath and only allowing mind wandering very seldomly. So we're progressively reaching towards more and more stable attention on the object of focus, which is the breath. So my next question for you has anyone progressed to stage 2 of the meditation at all, which is where you've sustained your attention on the breath for a longer period of time? As I mentioned in the beginning of this course, it's definitely possible to jump between the different stages of advancement in your meditation practice. So, for example, even if you're not meditating every day yet, you might have experienced within your meditations a longer period of focus on the breath and less mind wandering. In stage 3 of meditation, which we'll talk about more today, you're going to never forget the breath. You'll be able to have consistent, stable attention on your object of focus. If you're not meditating every day, check in with your motivation to see if it's really strong enough. Sometimes we need to look at the feeling behind the why. So we usually start with somewhat superficial reasons for doing something, and then after a little bit more thought, we get to more of a deeper feeling and an underlying reason for picking up a new habit or adopting a new practice. So if you're not meditating every day, come back to your motivation and try and look at the why behind the why, or the feeling behind the why of your reason for practicing meditation. We're all dealing with the same challenges too if you're building up a regular practice. One is time, one is procrastination, one is reluctance and resistance, and the other is self-doubt. So if you keep coming back to one of those different reasons to not meditate, then take some time to contradict yourself. Maybe instead of saying, I don't have enough time to meditate, instill the underlying belief that you do actually have enough time to meditate, and convince yourself of that truth instead of the previous one. Procrastination is just about making meditation a priority. Convince yourself meditation is the most important thing to do. And reluctance and resistance, perhaps you can convince yourself that meditation is actually fun, and it's fun to learn a new skill and to train your mind to focus. And when you're dealing with self-doubt, just remember that this is a new practice. It's a beginning. You're a learning student, but beginnings won't last forever, and the more you practice, the more confidence you'll have in your skills over time. So we talked about a couple different skills for maintaining focus on the breath. One is counting. Remember, you're supposed to forget about that tool, counting, once you really stabilize your attention on the breath. And then there's another tool or sort of game that you can play to keep it interesting, to stay focused on the breath, and that's following the breath. So you want to notice the 4 parts of your breath: the inhale, a pause, the exhale, and a pause. And just noticing when each one of those phases begins and ends. Another thing to keep in mind is that you want to keep both attention and awareness open. So even though your mind is focusing on the breath, it won't be the center of attention for the whole duration of your meditation. You should actually allow different things to come into your awareness, the sounds around you, the sensations in your body, and allow the focus of your attention, your breath, to shift into the foreground and into the background. When you shift into different stages of your meditation in your progress, your breath will become the center of attention, but you don't need to worry about that right now. I wanted to introduce some benchmarks for stage 3 because, as I mentioned, even though you're in stage 1 or stage 2, you might start to experience higher levels of concentration, which are more denoted in stage 3 or 4 or 5. There's 10 stages total, by the way, at least in this framework for learning meditation. So when you master stage 3, you'll no longer forget the breath. And this is a really big milestone. Continuous attention on one single object is it's a really deep skill that takes a while to build. So if you find yourself accomplishing this benchmark in stage 3, continuous attention on the breath without mind wandering, without forgetting, you deserve a huge, big congratulations, because that's something that really takes a lot of practice and a lot of discipline, and it's not something that can easily be accomplished just by trying it out the first time. It's a practice. So you'll continue to practice the skill of following the breath, that is, noticing each 4 parts of the breath. And the more practiced you become at this skill, the more you'll start to notice different sensations of the breath. So not just what it feels like to start the inhale or start the exhale, but more subtle things, more subtle sensations through every little part of the inhale and exhale. You might start to notice even 4, 5, 6, 12 or more different sensations that arise through the process of inhaling, exhaling, and pausing, and perhaps even noticing how those sensations correlate with your state of mind. So the way that you breathe correlates with the way that you're being. And this kind of transverses over into another different skill called connecting. So that is noticing the length of time for your inhales and the exhales and pauses, and noticing how the longer you inhale or exhale correlates with a more peaceful state of mind, for example. So here we are. Another skill, along with following the breath, is connecting, noticing how the way that you breathe correlates with the state of your mind. I'd like to also introduce another skill, another technique today that's called introspective awareness. So this is being aware of what's happening in the mind. So it's sort of taking a step back and thinking about your thinking. So rather than getting caught up in your thinking, you are becoming a third-person objective observer. So this tool comes in handy when you're working on stabilizing attention on one thing, because you'll preemptively notice when you're about to forget the breath. So there's 2 subcategories of labeling, of introspective awareness. One is labeling. So when you are labeling, that is noticing when your mind starts to do something else that's not focusing on the breath. 3 examples of this are thinking, planning, or remembering. So say you're sitting in your meditation and you're trying to focus on the breath, and then your mind starts to do something else, thinking, planning, or remembering. Notice that, label that, and then bring your mind back to focusing on the breath. Another skill here, similar to labeling, is checking in. So this is thinking about what you're thinking about before you forget the breath. So it might seem counterintuitive to check in and put the breath on the back burner while you let the forefront of your mind notice distractions as they're very, very subtle and start to arise. But it actually prevents subtle distractions from morphing into gross distractions, which can lead into forgetting. So we all have distractions, and they start very subtly, but they'll grow bigger and bigger until they become a gross distraction and completely pull your mind away from the breath. So the goal in checking in and labeling is to prevent small distractions from becoming big distractions. Another thing that I wanted to talk about today, we kind of talked about a little bit last week, was dealing with physical pain. Because this can be a huge distraction and pull your attention away from the object of focus as well. So when you feel physical pain, make that the object of focus. So here you are intentionally bringing your mind away from the breath and instead into the part of your body, that physical sensation where you feel pain. Because what we're really doing is training this facility of attention. And the purpose is to choose what you land your attention on, not necessarily being able to focus on your breath 100% of the time. That's actually just training for being able to focus your attention at any one given thing. So whether it's pain or whether it's the jackhammer going on in the background that you can't silence, shift your attention 100% towards that distraction and focus in on it. When that distraction either disappears or dissipates, then return your mind's focus back to your breath. If that distraction, whether it's the pain or the noise, doesn't disappear at all, then if it's pain in your body, for example, move. Remember, take your time to move and decide where you'll move before you make that movement. So, for example, if your leg is falling asleep, think, okay, I'm going to lean back. I'm going to straighten my leg. I'm going to lean forward, and then I'll refocus my attention on the breath. When you move, you will probably notice that a new sensation of pain or discomfort starts to arise. So you'll see that it becomes somewhat pointless to move at all, and it's actually easier to just focus on that physical sensation and watch as it changes or dissipates. So now we're going to do about a 15-minute meditation, and then I'll guide you through that, and then we're going to wrap up with a little bit of guidance on how to deal with dullness and drowsiness, which will inevitably arise as you progress your meditation skills. So meet me over on your mat in a seated position, and we'll get started for a 15-minute meditation. As we're getting set up, you can take a moment to remember your motivation, set your goals for this sit, perhaps sustaining your attention for a longer period on your breath, or overcoming feelings of self-doubt or reluctance and resistance. You might also take note of potential distractions before they arise, as that's a great way to overcome them in advance. So let's go sit on our mats. Take your time to find a comfortable seat. Settle in. And rest your hands on your knees or your thighs. Close your eyes or find a soft gaze. Relax your shoulders. Relax your face. Expand your awareness outward to the space that you're in, noticing the sounds that you hear. You might even visualize yourself sitting in this space. And then start to narrow your attention inward. Focus on your whole body, feeling the sensations in your whole body. Then continue to narrow your attention inward, focusing on the sensation of your breath as it hits your nostrils and moves in and out of your abdomen. And then continue to narrow your attention inward. Focus on the breath, the sensation of breath at the tip of your nose or just your abdomen, expanding outward and inward. Now allow your mind to stay open in your peripheral awareness. So there's definitely going to be other thoughts that cross your mind. And the goal is just to keep focus of breath somewhere in the field of your consciousness. So your breath doesn't have to be the center of attention, but just keep it there. Keep it somewhat on your mind. And when a distraction starts to creep up into center stage, label that. Thinking, planning, or remembering. And then redirect your focus back to your breath. Once you land your attention on your breath, you can use the method of counting to keep it on your breath, at least for the first couple minutes or so of stabilizing your attention. So there will be an inhale, a slight pause, and then an exhale, and say in your mind to yourself the number 1. After your next inhale and exhale, count upward to the number 2. After your next exhale, continue to count upward up to number 5 or 10. Relax your physical body and your face. And use that technique of following the breath. Notice when your inhale begins, how long it lasts. When the pause begins, and how long it lasts. When your exhale begins, how long that lasts. When your exhale ends, and how long that pause lasts. You might notice that your exhales are longer than your inhales, or vice versa. You might notice that there's a very short or long pause between your breaths. And just by watching your breath, you might subconsciously start to change your breath. And that's okay. Just make sure that you're not purposefully trying to change the length of your inhales or exhales. Our main concern in meditation is just to be an objective observer without trying to control anything. And by following the breath, you'll notice how each breath and each part of each breath is completely unique. And at this stage of your meditation practice, you can even coach yourself, sort of like a sports commentator, noticing how each breath is completely unique. Checking in with those nuances of each inhale and exhale. sort of like a game that you're playing with yourself to keep this meditation interesting and inspiring. With your mind being open to peripheral awareness, there's always going to be something more enticing that the brain likes to follow and attach to. But we're training the mind to be very specific and deliberate about what we place our attention on. And in this case, it's the breath. If you start to notice pain in your physical body, you can shift your object of focus to that sensation and keep that at the center of your mind. Letting everything else drift into the background. Notice how the sensation changes. Notice how the sensation might dissipate the more you pay attention to it. Relax your shoulders and your face. And if that painful sensation has changed, you can bring your focus back to your breath. If you need to move, then move very, very slowly, just planning each micro movement before you make it. Keep in mind that the more you celebrate that moment you remember to focus on your breath, the more easily your mind will become trained to do it consciously. So there's no need to berate oneself for realizing that you forgot the breath, because that's just going to happen. That's part of the learning process. And rather than punishing yourself or talking down to yourself for noticing, give yourself props. Because when you notice, that shows progress. And then right after you notice, make it interesting to watch your breath, either counting or following every part of the inhale and exhale. Here you are learning a new skill. Beginnings are tough, but they don't last forever. So the more you encourage yourself at this beginning stage, the more easy it will be to deepen your knowledge and to practice with regularity. it's actually a really good thing if you can notice distractions. So just remember that we're practicing these two facilities of the mind: stable attention on the breath and peripheral awareness, that scanning facility of the mind to jump from one thing to another. The one thing that we're training is to be deliberate about what the mind lands on. Label whatever thought it is that's creeping in alongside attention on your breath. And remind yourself that breath and focus on one thing is actually the most interesting thing for you to do right now. And give yourself a tremendous amount of respect for taking the time to sit down and taking the time to practice this discipline. And this is the hardest part of meditation, just breaking through these initial stages of scattered attention. This is going to get easier and easier. And by carving out this time for yourself today, you're that much closer to embodying your goals for meditation practice. And give yourself just a few more moments to seal in your practice for today. Refocusing on your breath. And then start to expand your awareness outward. And start to blink your eyes open. And begin to move your body and release. Nice. So that was about a 15-minute meditation. Let me know how it went. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope that you're able to stay positive, because that's the most important thing. You're doing a great job just in showing up for your practice. There's no need to judge the quality of your meditations. So the more, as we advance to more as we advance to higher levels of meditation, you're going to start to feel dull and drowsy in your mind. That's just part of what happens as we're relaxing the mind. So there's a couple of tips and techniques that I can offer you to deal with this dullness and sleepiness. I know some of you were mentioning that you start to fall asleep in your meditations. So one remedy for that is to meditate while sitting upright. You could even do a walking meditation or a standing meditation. You could also do a technique called breath retention, which is just taking in a really deep breath, holding your breath, and then when you feel complete, let it go. Another technique similar to that is muscular tension, where you just tense up your whole body and hold that muscular tension for a few moments, maybe even so much that you start to shake, and then letting it go. If you need something a little bit more drastic, you could get up from your meditation, splash some cold water on your face, and then go sit back down to refocus. If after doing one of these refocusing or waking up techniques, you're still starting to slip back into dullness or drowsiness, then try a different technique or do that technique for a little bit longer so that the effects are stronger when you're trying to stay awake in your meditation. So that's all I have for you in practice today. I hope that it was really helpful, and please email me any questions, comments, or feedback you have as you're practicing on your own and as you are following these lessons. I'm always happy to customize them based on where you are in your practice or what you need, so don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you in practice next week.